Thank you, Chair. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be appraising you on the impact of maritime affairs on the national security of Sri Lanka. Traditionally, Sri Lanka held a very strategically valued location in the Indian Ocean. As per history, riches of the East and West exchanged through this maritime passage of the much famous Silk Route and had passed through the ports of this island. The country had prospered through this maritime trade, and due to its attractive location and resources, subsequently came under the foreign domination of the Portuguese in 1505, Dutch in 1656, and finally under the British in 1815, and until independence was gained in 1948. It is no secret that Churchill, the wartime Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, had once expressed that the most dangerous moment of the Second World War was when the Imperial Japanese fleet headed towards Ceylon in April 1942, a statement that emphasized the strategic importance of Sri Lanka's location in the Indian Ocean. Geographically, Sri Lanka is situated at the southern tip of India, separated by a narrow strip of water of the Pork Strait. The coastline of the island extends over 1,340 kilometers and consists of an ocean regime of 12 nautical miles of territorial sea and 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone. This gives an ocean area 7 times of the landmass, and the claim submitted for the outer limit of the continental shelf would increase the sea area to over 30 times of the island. Sri Lanka is also responsible for a search and rescue region that is nearly 27 times of the landmass. The international sea lines of communication, passing very close to the southern part of the country, also adds tremendous importance to the country's maritime considerations. In the recent past, an event that impinged on the national security of this country re-emphasized that maritime security strategy is a prime element of national security, which was evident through the acts of the Sea Tigers, the sea arm of the LTT, that had disconcerting impact on maritime affairs of the country during over 2 decades of the protected conflict. Consequently, LTT Sea Tigers, using asymmetric combat tactics at sea, had exerted threats of piracy and maritime terrorism on sea lanes of communication and carried out sabotage in major ports of the country, skyrocketing insurance premiums on shipping. It was seen that at each phase of the conflict that the Sea Tigers raised the level of the asymmetry, making the Navy reactive to the threat until the last phase, when the trend was reversed by a masterstroke of a strategy by the Navy that annihilated the Sea Tiger fighting strength and tempo, and in turn paved the way for a successful humanitarian operation to be accomplished. However, this strategy and maritime security operations aimed at specific challenges, particularly to defeat the Sea Tigers, and certainly is not the forward-thinking maritime security strategy for the nation. The post-conflict Sri Lanka has blueprints to accelerate national development and also concentrate on ocean resources and opportunities. The strategic location of the island has omnipresent viability to exploit maritime trade. As for the vision of the government, essential infrastructures are now being developed rapidly to present Sri Lanka as a maritime hub of the region. With important maritime economic development in place, a far-reaching maritime strategy is needed to embrace the said potentials while giving due consideration to prevalent threats to maritime security and good order at sea, which has a direct bearing on our national security. Unlike in the past, today national security does not constitute a total military approach, but a balance between diplomacy, economic, social, and physical security. Nevertheless, military strategy still holds prominence encompassing ground, air, and maritime strategies. So, we realize the wisdom of the saying that development without security is not possible and security without development is temporary. Maritime security is a complex segment of national security, which is a contextually invaluable and infallible element for a coastal or island nation. Surrounding seas of a state provides for national development through enormous resources it contains, use it as a route for transportation, value it as a means of wealth, and finally, a frontier as a source of protection, power, and domination. Maritime security covers everything from physical safety and security measures to one's ports, slocks, sea area, and resources therein, including countering all threats such as piracy, crimes, or terrorist activities out at sea. Thus, it is seen linked directly to national security, efforts of a specific country, or it could cover regional or international efforts to augment or reinforce maritime security. Ladies and gentlemen, so what is maritime security? As the Royal Navy defines the concept of maritime security operations is as shown on the slide. Ladies and gentlemen, therefore we see that contemporary maritime security is not entirely seaward defense against threats on national security from outside forces, let that be foreign belligerents or elements of subversive insurgents. It encompasses expensive expectations of a nation and complex in nature, inclusive of seaward defense, good order at sea, ensuring the safety and security of shipping, and law enforcement on the ocean regime. It permits countries to pursue their maritime interest and develop their marine resources in accordance with the coastal states' rights and jurisdiction, agreed principles of international law and obligations. But this is merely wishful, and no coastal state has so far been able to maintain total good order at sea on its own. As Sri Lanka lies in almost the center of the Indian Ocean, it would be important to understand the Indian Ocean's strategic context and maritime characteristics combined with the geopolitics of this ocean region, which has direct effects on national security of this country. The Indian Ocean is vast and covers 20% of the Earth's surface. Indian Ocean states include 51 coastal and landlocked states, with 26 Indian Ocean rim countries. The Indian Ocean region is rich in energy resources and minerals and also contains substantial fishing resources. Oil and gas traversing the Indian Ocean is of great importance to the global economy. Roughly 55% of known oil reserves and 40% of the gas reserves are in the Indian Ocean region. The Gulf and Arab states produce around 21% of the world's oil, with daily crude exports to up to 17,262 million barrels, representing about 43% of the international exports, and all this is exported through the sea. For instance, China imports 48% of its oil, out of which 68% is from Middle East. India imports 70% of its oil, out of which 64% is from Middle East. And USA imports 60% of its oil, out of which 21% is from the Middle East. As for Sri Lanka, she depends totally on the sea route to obtain all of its oil and gas needs, and this flow of oil and gas through the Indian Ocean is very vital to the nation's security and survival. Indian Ocean ports handle about 30% of global trade, and half of the world's container traffic travels through this ocean. Also, the Indian Ocean has some of the world's most important choke points, notably the Straits of Hormuz, Malacca, and the Bab el-Mandeb. As the flow of traffic can easily be interfered with at these choke points, these become strategically important for global trade and energy flow, resulting in the number of extra-regional states maintain a naval presence in the Indian Ocean. Ladies and gentlemen, with this said, it should be understood that the strategic importance of Sri Lanka by its location in the Indian Ocean itself is a principal factor in comprehending the complexity of maritime security and impact of maritime affairs on Sri Lanka's national security. The central location in the Indian Ocean has inherently bestowed the island with an imperious position in geographical interest of the Indian Ocean and maritime commerce. Therefore, Sri Lanka invariably draws the attention of the world and regional powers. And these powers influence ocean governance and policies that in turn have an effect on maritime security. Consequently, a considerable sea area of the Indian Ocean is subjected to Sri Lanka's coastal state rights and jurisdiction, resulting in Indian Ocean maritime affairs invariably affecting the national security of the island and vice versa. However, the modern concept of maritime security is far more complex, as I have mentioned, and post-independence Sri Lanka had seen turmoil at sea that affected her maritime security. Thus, coastal and seaward defense, policy in the seas to uphold coastal rights, countering non-state actors at sea, protection of maritime resources, safeguarding all important maritime trade and sea lanes of communication are primary, among other things, for the Navy to uphold maritime security and safeguard national security interests. Most maritime affairs that have an impact on Sri Lanka's national security are not inherent only to this country, but common to regional and global users of the Indian Ocean, while some issues are bilateral, such as illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing issues. Concern over sea lane and choke point security is one that any maritime nation cannot ignore in the current context. Codependency between states for the flow of global maritime trade is crucial, an interruption of which will affect worldwide and could be extremely critical to some nations' survival. Today, in the post-conflict enemies of the states are insurgents that use irregular and asymmetric warfare and are dynamic and networked. Security of this ocean can be threatened by means of terrorist threats, threat by states, transnational criminals, and piracy. In this context, some of the maritime issues impacting the national security of Sri Lanka could be stated in the following manner. The broadest of shipping lane that connects east-west trade in the Indian Ocean is the lane that touches south of Sri Lanka, which is followed by a large number of ships. In an era that 90% of the world trade is transported by sea, the security of shipping and sea lane communication in the Indian Ocean is an issue of major strategic concern to a large number of countries for their survival. In the first instance, sea lane security is important to the nation's economies of Indian Ocean countries, specifically to their industrial and commercial sectors, since trade through sea is their main link to global markets. The Indian Ocean is furthermore a vital transit route between the Pacific region, Africa, and Europe, with vast cargoes passing through the region. The world's most important oil and gas routes traverse the Indian Ocean, where energy security is found crucial to sustain industrial and economic progress in both developed and developing states. As recent history has shown, concerns about hindrance by states and asymmetrical attacks on energy resources and shipping is a very serious issue. Any interruption of this energy flow through Indian Ocean following maritime routes means a worldwide economic fall down and directly affects on national security. Today, more than 300 merchant ships sail on the slock just south of Sri Lanka on a daily basis. And in this setting, Sri Lanka has been once again blessed as to its past glory of being a maritime transit center. In the world ranking of ports, the Colombo port stands 29th and expects to rise up in position to 12th or 13th with the augmentation of annual capacity to a total of 7.2 million TEU when the Colombo port expansion project is completed. Sri Lanka's Ports Authority aspires to reach 2,200 million tonnage of annual cargo handling and earn $1 billion revenue by 2020 in the port of Colombo alone. The new port at Hambantota is located within 10 nautical miles from one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, and it is ideally located at the intersection of major international sea trading routes. Carved into the land with a 60-meter depth and a deep water approach, the port provides an ideal gateway for highly cost-effective feed operations and domestic logistics handling of specialized cargo, including vehicles and break bulk. Additionally, the world's third largest natural harbour, Trincomalee, is situated in the east coast of Sri Lanka. The commercial potential of this harbour, due to its mere size, is tremendous, and the government of Sri Lanka has put in place plans for ambitious and mega development projects centred around this harbour. Also, the ports at Galle, Kankasanture, and Oluville are too being developed to accommodate this potential. Therefore, the value of harbours, slocks, and maritime trade is very vital to our national well-being and economic development of Sri Lanka, and security and protection of same is of utmost importance. A prominent capacity of maritime terrorism had been demonstrated by the Sea Tiger wing of the LTT before terrorist organization was defeated militarily in the domestic front in mid-2009. The LTT, who fought an insurgency in Sri Lanka, had nurtured efficacious tactics, including suicidal attacks using surface and underwater means. The LTT had also operated a worldwide shipping network to smuggle arms, people and narcotics, exploiting the freedom at high seas and indolent security measures in some ports of Southeast Asia. The vulnerability of the maritime transport system is very real and could turn a ship to a weapon delivery mean to target a port, which in any case would have result appalling economic and inhuman cost. Terrorists could destroy a tanker, creating serious environmental disaster, or even hold a ship in hostage on political demand. Sea Tiger asymmetric tactics in attrition surface combat, capacity to launch underwater sabotage as suicide diving missions, improvised sea mines, and other acts had been very effective as experienced by us. In response, the Navy was engaged to the limits of exhaustion to protect the slocks. At the end, the Navy's inventive strategy destroyed the Sea Tigers to the last, but the cost of combat over the years had been very expensive. Also, the LTT became a threat not only to Sri Lanka but to other countries in the sense that its techniques were widely used and copied by other terrorist organizations, which should be noted. Sea piracy, since 2007, has become a significant impediment to global maritime commerce. The estimated annual cost due piracy to global economy is around $7 to 12 billion. The projected cost of piracy by 2014 is $13 to 15 billion. In 2010, 86% of the piracy activities worldwide were committed by the Somalian pirates. Besides this, projection of piracy off Somalia coast have considerably dropped, now owing to coordinated international action to minimize piracy. Even though there is no reported piracy action in Sri Lankan waters, there were a number of incidents in the Indian Ocean. Incidentally, over 20 acts of armed robberies at sea, among other international crimes committed by the LTTE, demonstrated the ease of turning maritime terrorism to piracy, though it is not within the definition of piracy. Right now, there is no direct impact on Sri Lanka through piracy, but it affects the entire global maritime trade, and thereby Sri Lanka also could be affected due to this threat, which is a concern. A major factor that disturbs good order at sea is illegal migration by sea. Illegal migration that originates here are economic migration, irrespective of different interpretations given to it. Human trafficking had been a thriving income earner to LTT when they had their vessels using well-laid international networks, but has fallen into the hands of organized crime groups. With the annihilation of the LTT on ground in Sri Lanka, terrorists are also illegally migrating, encouraged by their foreign networks, and also involved in trafficking of their cargoes across borders, which is a danger, especially to the receiving country. The mechanism of trafficking and often fabricated stories in order to make a compelling case for acceptance as refugees damage national image as well as affects national security. Drug trafficking and arms smuggling is an important aspect whilst considering maritime security. Due to huge profits, drug trafficking has become one of the most money-spinning means which is used to finance terror networks and arms trafficking. Narcotics produced in the Golden Triangle and Golden Crescent is also routed via sea using mechanized fishing craft, where close cooperation among countries are very necessary to counter this menace. Gun running by sea is also the fastest means of transferring arms and ammunition worldwide. Arms smuggling can prompt interstate conflicts or disputes. The LTT domestically survived for nearly 3 decades on the fact that it had an efficient procurement and supplies network spanning over many countries. This network was established to carry out the LTT's propaganda campaign, organize its international arms procurement, and assist in various fundraising and criminal activities. These funds were laundered through the LTT's sophisticated international finance networks using hard-to-trace, documentless transactions. Smuggling process of warlike material was highly complicated to deceive maritime defenses of the Navy. Shipments were generally transferred to LTT ships unloaded to fishing trawlers as far from 200 to 300 nautical miles away from Sri Lanka. This is the network that the Sri Lanka Navy destroyed and paved the way for LTT's defeat, which was a major concern to our national security. Ensuring good order at sea is crucial in making our ocean region safe, which has global effects. But ocean governance is more specific on a national ocean policy that reflects on ocean environment management. Oil spills, pollution from ship waste, ballast water management has often been central to the issue of marine pollution, and managing same is a challenge to the shipping industry. As for Sri Lanka, the heavy marine traffic passing through our waters has to be monitored for malpractices and pollution, which is a threat to our marine environment and needs to be effectively mitigated. The Navy of this country has unparalleled experiences in combating asymmetric warfare in maritime terrorism than any other country in the region, and worth sharing with others to enable them in meeting similar challenges. This experience of maritime terrorism unleashed on the country had proved the impact it could project on national security. There were various viewpoints that have been presented on the way for naval control of the seas that will work perfectly at times of war and peace to ensure good order at sea that has a direct impact on national security. Achieving maritime security is fundamentally cross-linked with all stakeholders and departments at national level, while regional integration too being very important to address common challenges in our ocean region, as a singular approach cannot achieve the desired goals in this vast ocean space. Regional integration needs to focus on building up a cooperative security dialogue and effective apparatus. This regional integration is important to be expanded through strong defense cooperation measures aimed at being proactive to events, also such as natural disasters, search and rescue operations, and maritime pollution incidents, with close coordination with regional navies and coast guards. Such formation of defense cooperation measures necessarily requires going beyond the traditional models and concentrating on improved collective Indian Ocean region cooperation and action. Finally, it is a fact that almost all countries of the world depend on the sea, especially for their sustenance of their energy needs and trade, which has direct bearing on their national security. Also, many states' strategic weakness exists on their slocks due to their significant dependency on sea for energy and trade. Other illegal activities at sea, as explained in this paper, too have direct or indirect effects on the majority of the nation's well-being. As many of the challenges, threats, and concerns out at sea are common to all with no visible boundaries, it is of utmost importance that while individual measures are executed, greater collaborative efforts to be initiated among our nations at global, regional, and sub-regional levels to combat these common threats, to assure safer seas to all, to achieve our national interest, and ensure our security. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.